Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be doing a very different type of ranking than what you're probably used to. When most people rank characters in Super Smash Bros., they often do it based on how much they like the character as a fighter. That's too cliche for me. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to be ranking these characters based on how much I enjoy their games. So for example, Steve will not be included at all because I've never played Minecraft, whereas someone like Banjo and Kazooie is going to be ranking very high on the list because I love Banjo-Kazooie. Sometimes hype might go into it because I might have trouble deciding if a game is better, but I'm happier that it got represented because, for example, I like Three Houses better than a lot of the games on this list, but does that necessarily mean I'm more hyped for Byleth than, say, Banjo? So this list is going to be concerned with my hype, my excitement, and hopefully that can get you guys talking and let me know in the comment section how would you have made this list different. I'd love to hear your opinions and what games you've played that I haven't, and so on. So without further ado, enjoy the rankings. At the bottom of my list is Roy. Now you may be wondering, wait a minute, Paul, you have a Fire Emblem character all the way down? What's wrong with you? You're a huge fan of Fire Emblem. Yes, that's true, but unfortunately the main game that Roy is known for, Fire Emblem The Binding Blade, never made it over to North America. However, he did have a cameo in Fire Emblem, the original, as a little boy at the very end of the game and didn't really do anything, because Fire Emblem was a prequel to Binding Blade, so hopefully we'll get his game one of these days. I could also really stretch it and also mention that if you have the Roy amiibo, you can get a ghost of Roy to appear in Fire Emblem Echoes to fight on your side for one turn, but that's really stretching it. So I'm just going to stick to my original Fire Emblem rating for now and just say, I'm hyped for potentially having a better future with Roy if they ever release Binding Blade over here. The Mii fighters are ranked low because, well, I like the concept of the Miis being in Smash. I think that's incredible. I really liked Miis on the Wii, and you won't believe how many Miis we had saved to our original Wii before it broke. But it's ranked low on this list because these Miis are primarily focused on original ideas for Smash. And I didn't think that would be very fair to take Smash as a franchise and put it in rankings with several other games that they're trying to reference. That being said, I do think it's amazing that so many cool games were represented through Mii costumes, like Undertale getting in because of a Sans costume, for instance. That just blew my mind back then and sort of made me excited for all Mii costumes coming forth. It almost made Mii costumes almost as grand as a character reveal, and in some cases, even better. The Miis have potential for amazing spirit battles and countless combinations of lots of different characters, so you're really only limited by your imagination, which I don't have much of, so let's move on. Mr. Game & Watch is such a cool outside-the-box idea. I'm pretty sure he was the Piranha Plant and Wii Fit trainer of the Melee era. I personally have only owned one Game & Watch in my life, and that was the Donkey Kong Jr. game. It wasn't on an actual Game & Watch, mind you. It was on a mini that was shaped like a Game Boy Color so that I could perfect my skills in Donkey Kong Jr. I think that was actually my first exposure to Donkey Kong to begin with. It had the watch and it had the alarm, neither of which were very good. If you got a Game & Watch, you got it for the games. And the game was alright. It was definitely a way better version of Donkey Kong Jr. than the version I reviewed on NES, but when a game only has one screen and no animations, it can only hold my attention for so long. Marth first made his appearance in Fire Emblem Shadow Dragons and the Blade of Light, which only recently came to North America on the Switch, and I hated that game with a passion. I can't believe Fire Emblem started out in such a broken mess. Admittedly, it was pretty ambitious for the time it was released, but man, Fire Emblem has come so far. Boy, am I glad we got Fire Emblem 7 on the Game Boy Advance first, or I would have said, you're expecting me to like this franchise? Now, I did play the DS remake of Shadow Dragon first, and I thought Marth was an okay character. He was definitely the weakest lord of all the Fire Emblem protagonists. But he grew on me enough where whenever he appeared in other Fire Emblem games and spin-offs, I would at least get interested. I liked his support conversations in Fire Emblem Warriors. He was a pretty good fighter as it was. And he also subtly made an appearance in Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which was pretty incredible in a game that didn't really have that great of a story. So I'm glad that they incorporated at least a little bit of Fire Emblem lore. Nevertheless, Marth is pretty darn low because Shadow Dragon was definitely my least favorite Fire Emblem game. I'm definitely glad that the remaining Fire Emblem characters on this list are going to be considerably higher. When I was in school, we had an NES that we would play during our free time, and we had the Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt bundle. So a lot of us booted it up for Super Mario Bros., but every now and then we're like, well, there's another game on the cartridge, so why don't we see what it is? So it was really cool when Duck Hunt was revealed for Smash, because it represented not only that original Duck Hunt game, but a series of light gun shooters that Nintendo had made during that era as well. Admittedly, at the time, I was salty because I thought, that's clearly Sakurai's way of saying they couldn't include Banjo and Kazooie yet, because they would have been a dead ringer for that dual character. But I've grown to appreciate how a very simple game where you just take a zapper, plug it into your NES, and fire at the TV has its appeal. And I only recently learned that you could plug in an NES controller and that person could control the ducks. Unfortunately, Duck Hunt has kind of lost a lot of its appeal on modern TVs. As early as about 3 years ago, I got an actual NES and a zapper and a copy of Super Mario Bros. Plus Duck Hunt again after all these years, and I could not shoot a single duck because the gun was designed to work with CRT TVs and not modern TVs. Thankfully, if you're watching this and the Wii U Virtual Console hasn't been shut down yet, they actually added Wii Remote options so that you can use that instead of a zapper. So get it while you can, assuming Nintendo never re-releases it in a better state. I'm glad that Duck Hunt is a nice reminder of the very simple roots of my childhood. Piranha Plant was definitely an out-of-nowhere pick. I definitely did not see that coming, although I did predict that Piranha Plant would be an assist trophy in one of my pre-Smash 3DS prediction notebooks, so at least I got it right that the Piranha Plant would be in Smash in some capacity besides as a trophy. Piranha Plant may not seem like that hype of a character, but he actually has quite a lot of references packed into him. His final Smash is a direct nod to the first boss battle in Subspace Emissary, where he fought against Petey Piranha, who technically first appeared in Super Mario Sunshine. There's also a lot of other subtle little things that the Piranha Plant does, like spewing poison gas for his side special, which I believe, based on the color scheme he turns into, is reference to Paper Mario, how there were poison piranhas that would use that move against you. And then the shooting the spiky ball was in reference to New Super Mario Bros. U that had enemies like that. So there's a nice bunch of references to Mario games and a couple of Mario spin-offs. And he was pretty fun to play and see, like, oh, dang, I didn't know they'd be referencing that obscure thing. And Super Mario 3D World fans are gonna, of course, be really happy that the Piranha Creeper was referenced in Piranha Plant's Side Smash. So, who knew that such a simple character could carry so many references? So, the Pokemon that came with Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow are pretty darn low on this list because I'm not a huge fan of Pokemon. However, I put them on this list anyway because I liked certain parts of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. I liked the music. I thought the graphics were great. That's about it. I mean, I can see why Pokemon would have the appeal. Like, trying to form your ultimate team and the appeal of trying to 100% the Pokédex must have seemed like a really ambitious move for the Game Boy to have that many different creatures, and most of them had a unique moveset. I just could never get into the random battles and a lot of RNG-based combat, but I'm also really glad that Smash Bros. Allowed the Pokemon to be more expressive based on their more recent games, Pikachu in particular getting the top slot on this list because she, I should say, can dress up as Pikachu Libre, which is based on Pokemon Tournament. I think Pikachu Libre may have been in something else first, but I'm pretty sure Pokemon Tournament was the inspiration for that. Mewtwo was slightly higher than Pokemon Trainer because I really liked Mewtwo's role in Detective Pikachu. And I guess Detective Pikachu as a whole, Pikachu had a vastly different character that I am glad that they made a spirit battle of in Smash Brothers, because so many people seem to think that it was only a movie, and they forget that the video game came out a year before the movie did. So I appreciate the Pokemon's inclusion, but spoiler alert, I'm not going to include any of the later generations, because I just stopped after Let's Go and Yellow. I used to have Mega Man Anniversary Collection for the GameCube, and that's how I experienced a lot of Mega Man's early NES games. I mostly played Mega Man 2 because I thought that one was the best one. Admittedly, Mega Man games are more fun when you play them in small doses, as opposed to huge lumps. Like, I got all the way to the final level in Mega Man 2 before I had to give up because it was just so insanely hard. But I was able to beat Crash Man's stage, and I think I beat 2 others in Mega Man 2. So I had a decent love of the character. I was really glad that they put the Metal Blade in, because even me with my inexperienced mind thought that the Metal Blade was by far the best weapon in Mega Man 2 and could decimate a lot of the bosses and enemies. I was definitely pretty hyped when Mega Man got announced for Smash for 3DS and Wii U, and I'm glad that most of his moves referenced the NES games, which are the ones that I grew up with. Yay for another Capcom rep getting the okay. Oh, Pac-Man. What kid who's ever been to an arcade hasn't played Pac-Man? I definitely remember spending quite a lot of quarters on the arcade game and not being particularly good at it, but still liking how much value I could get for 25 cents, which admittedly isn't a whole lot. I eventually downloaded the NES version on the 3DS Virtual Console and got pretty darn far in it, but I still thought to myself, all you're really doing is just eating dots in a maze. It's not that good. Thankfully, since then, I've played some Pac-Man reimaginings that have reinstilled my love for the character, such as Namco Museum Arcade Pack on the Switch, which was a whole collection of Namco games, which included Pac-Man Championship Edition, which basically took the main game and made it way flashier. And so that was a lot of fun to eat the ghosts as if I was at a disco party. And then Pac-Man 99 was a decent attempt at damage control for Super Mario Bros. 35 being killed. I don't know, it didn't translate as well to the Tetris 99 formula as Mario 35 did, but it was still a decent time while it lasted. I don't know if I'm gonna be saying it's one of the best games of 2021, but it was at the very least a lot better than Pac-Man on the arcade. And hey, Pac-Man 99 is free. That even beats out 25 cents. Rob is short for a robotic operating buddy, and he was bundled as an accessory to the NES because Nintendo wanted to combat the notion of video games are crashing in the 80s and wanted the NES to be seen as a toy, and that helped the gaming industry recover from their huge setback. Unfortunately, the 2 games that Rob was compatible with, Stack Up and Gyromite, neither one of them were pretty good from what I heard. And Rob ended up mainly just being there as a toy for kids to use. Now, I never actually owned any of the games that Rob was compatible with, nor did I own Rob himself, but I did play the games that he appeared in, which Rob has an interesting history because his first on-screen appearance was actually in Mario Kart DS as a secret character, which was just so outside the box because that was the first non-Mario series character to appear in a Mario Kart game, which kind of paved the way for Mario Kart 8 being a huge crossover. And then he also had a very prominent role in Super Smash Bros. Brawl's Subspace Emissary, so that's why he's ranked decently high-ish on this list. I definitely like how Rob is sort of that oddball character that when he appears in a game, it's always in the way that you would least expect, and I definitely hope that Rob makes his way into another Nintendo project as way more than just an accessory and a laughingstock character. Falco is one of your wingmates in the Star Fox games, and I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Star Fox series. I beat Star Fox 1 and 2 on the Super Nintendo and thoroughly enjoyed both of them, and I also beat Star Fox 64 3D on the 3DS. Falco is ranked a little bit lower than the other Star Fox characters because you don't directly control him except in Star Fox 2. I never picked him for some reason. I think it was because I thought it was cool that you could play as a girl in that game and that they never appeared again in a Star Fox experience, so I would always play as one of them, from what I've been told. It didn't really make much of a difference. I think it was just a cosmetic preference. But I did think that Falco's attitude was kind of like a facade of who he really was. That he was actually a helpful wingmate that just didn't have that great of social skills, which kind of reminds me of me a little bit. Wario first appeared as a boss at the end of Super Mario Land 2 on the Game Boy, and I remember a lot of people said that battle was really easy, but it was actually kind of hard for me. Maybe it was because the 3DS controls didn't translate very well to the original Game Boy experience, but I definitely appreciate that Wario, I think, was meant to be a one-off character, and yet he ended up getting his own series. Now, I haven't played most of the Wario Land platformers, but I had a blast playing WarioWare Gold on the 3DS, and then I didn't really like WarioWare Get It Together. So most of my love for Wario is from his appearance in WarioWare Gold, which admittedly he doesn't really do a whole lot as a character. He's kind of just there as the boss of the WarioWare Incorporated company. That being said, I really loved how many voiced lines he got to do in WarioWare Gold, and I thought it was cool that Charles Martinet was able to get a much more substantial role in his games besides just saying "Wahoo!" and "Let's go!" all the time. I definitely hope that WarioWare Gold gets a proper revival and doesn't feel lazy and held back like Get It Together did. Like, couldn't they have at least voiced most of the cutscenes? Dr. Mario first appeared in, well, Dr. Mario on the NES, which then also had a Game Boy version, and it's been ported to just about every Nintendo system since. And I've played almost all of them. I played the original Dr. Mario plus its SP version on the Nintendo Switch Online app. The Game Boy version I was able to experience through the masterpieces in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. Dr. Mario 64 I played a little bit, didn't particularly like it at the time. Then I tried it again on Switch Online, didn't like it there either because they didn't let you use the control stick. I probably would have loved it if I didn't have to be forced to use the Joy-Con buttons. And then I was a huge addict to Dr. Mario Express on the DSiWare, and then Dr. Mario Miracle Cure on the 3DS, because back then I didn't really have a Switch, and I would like to use that game to pass the time while I was waiting for things, because I did a lot of waiting around at my job during a lot of the past 5 or 6 years. Dr. Mario, I feel like he was mainly meant to just be an obscure clone character of Mario in the beginning, but I definitely appreciate that his inclusion meant that the entirety of the original Dr. Mario soundtrack could be included, besides the startup screen, I guess, if you want to be technical. And most of the remixes were really good. Dr. Mario 64 got shafted because that game actually had considerably more music than the other Dr. Mario games, but hey, at least we got something. As most of you know, I've never actually played Final Fantasy VII, mainly because I don't like random battles, and I don't particularly like the turn-based RPG system that Final Fantasy uses because you don't really get a good indication of how much damage you're going to do when you're selecting a move. There's a lot of RNG involved, and it just doesn't seem like my kind of thing. If Final Fantasy VII Remake ever comes to the Switch, that'll be a totally different story. So why are Cloud and Sephiroth on this list then? It's because I played both of the Theatrhythm Final Fantasy games on the 3DS and got a chance to experience the music of their games, and I quite liked a lot of it. Mainly the stuff from some of the ports and remakes, such as Dissidia Final Fantasy, because man, the original Final Fantasy VII has some gratingly awful MIDI tracks. I know a certain friend of mine who would disagree with that sentiment, but I've never been a huge fan of fake music. I've always liked the real orchestral stuff. Not saying I'll never like MIDI, but it has to be a very specific kind, like how Sonic and Banjo-Kazooie handled it, to give you a little bit of a hint. But overall, I really respect compositions like One-Winged Angel and Aerith's theme. I just want them to be done a certain way, and thankfully, after Sephiroth joined the battle, that wish was able to be a reality, as Aerith's theme, the bombing mission, the main theme, and Cosmo Canyon were all impeccably done. But why didn't they have the Dissidia Final Fantasy version of One Winged Angel? Oh, Smash, you always gotta rely on the wrong priorities when it comes to Square Enix. Sora is the same deal as with Cloud and Sephiroth. The only Kingdom Hearts game that I played was Melody of Memory on the Switch, so I got to experience a lot of the music in Sora's games, and you actually do get to play as Sora in a lot of the sections. So most of my exposure to Kingdom Hearts comes from listening to the songs and being like, dang, that's some good music. Maybe I should actually play the series that it's from and see if it's worth the hype. From what I've been told, it's not. So let's really hope that I can rent them on the Switch instead of outright buying them, because knowing Square, they're probably going to charge a lot for it. And they're old games. Well, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 are. I don't know about 3. That might be worth the full price, but I've never played that. Although I do see the excitement in visiting the worlds of Frozen and Big Hero 6 and Toy Story. Those just sound incredible to me. Nevertheless, my exposure to Sora is 100% through his music. So when it was revealed that Sora was the final DLC fighter, the first thing that popped into my head was, oh boy, can't wait to hear what music tracks they had. Which was a little bit of a disappointment because they only had songs from Kingdom Hearts 1, but hopefully if I can rent the games coming to the Switch, I can get the much better music and maybe see if there were some songs that Melody of Memory left out. Since there were 3 different versions of Link in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, this particular iteration Toon Link is the Hero of Winds, which was the Link that was used in Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks. The latter 2 games I hated with a passion. I didn't even get past the first dungeon in Spirit Tracks because I hated it so much. Phantom Hourglass I got halfway through before I gave up because it was just such a boring experience. But Wind Waker I adore. It's been a while since I played Wind Waker, so my memories of the dungeons are a little bit hazy, but I do remember really liking the concept of sailing through an open sea and just finding an island and then trying to explore it. Admittedly, most of the islands were kind of lame. They didn't really have much to do on them, but I just remember Wind Waker being a very enjoyable game, although the reason why Toon Link is considerably lower on this list than the other Zelda reps is because I did not like Wind Waker's graphics. To this day, I still think that they're hideous, and even though they allowed for Link to be more expressive, which I respect, I generally don't like any of the artistic choices done. I don't like how a lot of the characters don't move their mouths when they speak. I don't really like the character designs. I don't like that their feet are too small. I wish the game would have stuck with the look that the trailer in 2000, that was the teaser between Link and Ganondorf fighting, was used. That's up for debate. If you like Wind Waker's graphics, good for you. But for me, I'm gonna stick to Twilight Princess's style. Captain Falcon is the mascot of the F-Zero series, and he actually didn't appear outside of his vehicle, unless you count the artwork in F-Zero X, until F-Zero GX, which had a story mode. However, they wanted to reference F-Zero somehow in the original Super Smash Bros., and that was certainly a surprise, because that was the first time besides GX that Captain Falcon had appeared in a game instead of just his vehicle in the F-Zero Racing series. However, his moveset, because he was primarily known as a racer, had to be based on the original moveset used back before Super Smash Bros. Was a Nintendo crossover, and it was just a generic fighting game. Captain Falcon I put on this list because I actually really like the F-Zero series. I'm just not particularly good at it. I tried playing the version on Super Nintendo, and I could not get the hang of those controls. F-Zero GX I liked a lot more. My sister and I played it together, but it was still very hard, and it was insanely tough to get the hang of those controls. So hopefully if it comes to the Switch, I can do a much more thorough coverage of it. But until then, I'll just say, Falcon, keep showing off. Maybe eventually Nintendo will see you and say, oh yeah, F-Zero exists. Let's do something about it. Min Min is from the fighting game ARMS on the Switch, and I thought ARMS was okay. It's just that it didn't have a whole lot of staying power. Like, once you beat the mini games and the ARMS Grand Prix, there wasn't really a whole lot of reasons to go back to it, because it just didn't have the same appeal as something like Smash Brothers did. That being said, of the characters that I saw in ARMS, I think I probably would have preferred Min Min as the preferred choice if I had my say. I think maybe Ribbon Girl, because Ribbon Girl is the character that I played as in ARMS. But Min Min just had a really cool design, and she was really cute, and like wasn't overly sexual at all, which is great because it seemed like most of the female characters try to go for sex appeal more than just a good moveset. I thought that ARMS, it was definitely great that it was represented in Smash, because I really liked a lot of the music tracks in ARMS, and when I first saw the trailer, I thought it looked incredible, which apparently I was the only person that did, because ARMS did not do as well as Nintendo hoped, and I think they put Min Min in because they had hoped to reinvigorate ARMS as a franchise, from what I heard. That didn't happen, so I guess Nintendo needs to learn that you can't just use Smash as a marketing gimmick. That may have worked in Melee, but times have changed and you gotta get with the times. King K. Rool was the final boss in Donkey Kong Country, and he was one of the less challenging bosses of that era. I was never the biggest fan of the Super Nintendo, not a whole lot of games I really liked for it. Donkey Kong Country was alright, but the main reason I liked it was because I was really good at Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, and this was sort of a more primitive version of those games. K. Rool has also appeared in a couple of other things that I thought were interesting. He was a playable character in Mario Super Sluggers for the Wii, which I didn't actually play, but my brothers loved it. And I just thought, that's such a random inclusion, because Donkey Kong is a sub-series of Mario. But it's still cool that he could get represented somehow, because, dang, if you haven't played Mario Super Sluggers, that roster is insane. King K. Rool was also the final boss of Donkey Kong 64, which I actually thought was a really incredible battle, because you fought him in a boxing ring, but you had to take advantage of each of the Kongs in succession to take him down in unique ways. I think my favorite phase was when Tiny Kong had to turn Little to go inside his shoes and then attack his toes, which, like, that's such a cool way of taking it down a boss. It almost seems like a Shadow of the Colossus fight before Shadow of the Colossus was actually a thing. So when K. Rool used his boxing gloves for his smash attack, and when his final smash was using the Blastomatic to destroy Donkey Kong Island, it's like, oh yeah, that's the game over screen of Donkey Kong 64. I just thought those are really cool callbacks to a game I used to really like on the Nintendo 64. Nowadays, that game is really hard to control its camera, but back then I really liked it, so maybe younger gamers, I don't know, maybe we were just better at games when we were kids. I have to admit I'm not really that much of a Metroid fan. I've tried to get into it on several occasions, but it just didn't really do much for me. I played a little bit of the original Metroid and Super Metroid, neither of which I particularly liked, mainly because of the controls. They were just too awful for me to get the hang of. Then I played a good deal of Samus Returns, but then I found that it got too hard. And then I played like a very small amount of Metroid Dread, and I found that too hard. I think I'm just not suited to Metroidvanias. But at the very least, there are certain elements of the Metroid series that I can respect. Like, I really like the melee counter that was introduced in Samus Returns. I appreciate that Samus Returns got some music tracks. And I also think Samus as a character is such a cool twist, because in the original Metroid, Samus was referred to with male pronouns in the manual, and so when she took off her helmet, and in the better endings took off everything, and it was revealed that she was actually a woman, that was actually a mind-blowing plot twist, because NES games generally didn't really have plot twists at all. And she's since become such an icon for true femininity, because she is showing these young, and I guess older girls, that women can be powerful heroes if they train properly. And that's one thing that's cool about Samus, is that she wasn't a Mary Sue, that she had to train with her Chozo parentage to get all the skills that she did. So take a note, other Mary Sues in media. Daisy was actually the princess Mario was trying to rescue in Super Mario Land instead of Princess Peach, but I never played that game. So my exposure to Daisy was mainly through the numerous Mario spin-offs, such as the Mario Party games, the Mario Kart games, and the Mario Sports titles. So more or less Daisy is just a, hey, here's someone else in a Mario Sports game. I like Daisy's spunky go-getter attitude. I don't always like how sometimes her short shorts can be a little bit too tight for the family-friendly nature of a Mario game, but then again, that's also more realistic than wearing a dress while you're playing tennis. And Mario Tennis was the first time Daisy and Peach were seen in anything other than a dress in the main Mario games, so I guess you can thank that if you like that kind of fan service. That's about the extent of my excitement for Daisy. Just that she makes for yet another character in the Mario spin-offs. But it is surprising that she got in and Waluigi didn't. I would think Waluigi had much more moveset potential, but then again I heard Echo Fighters were very cost efficient, so maybe that was the reason. Bowser Jr. made his debut in Super Mario Sunshine. Just in case you haven't seen his final smash, I won't say how Bowser Jr. appeared, just in case you somehow want to go into Sunshine blind, but I just think he's been a bit overused in games lately. That being said, I like Super Mario Sunshine a lot more than most people. When I replayed it recently on the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection, I realized that a lot of the stuff I had been saying were very untrue, and that game was actually a very unfinished, hard to control mess, but that could have also been because they didn't properly support the GameCube controller at launch. I don't know, maybe playing it on the GameCube again would prove to be a lot better, but generally speaking the structure was a lot worse than I remembered it being. However, I do really appreciate the twist as to how Bowser Jr. came about, and I also really like how his character has a whole bunch of other Mario references, like the fact that he uses drills for his smash attacks, which could be referencing the drill in Super Mario Galaxy 2. The fact that his side special turns him into a cart could be a reference to Mario Kart 7, and using the Mecha Koopa is a clear reference to Super Mario World. And you know me, I love all my casual references. It's really cool that even among his alternate costumes, he's referencing the Koopalings, which were bosses in Super Mario Bros. 3, who are even more overused than Bowser Jr. is, but that's a different discussion, because getting into the discussion about alternate costumes would just make things too confusing. So I think it was neat that Bowser Jr. was included as a character if they were going to have so many really cool callbacks, and even throw in the Koopalings, because what game with Mario in it doesn't have the Koopalings nowadays? Fox is the protagonist of the Star Fox series, although from the Star Fox games that I've played, he doesn't really do a whole lot outside the cockpit. Sure, you see him running from the Great Fox in Star Fox 64, but you don't really see him running around and shooting stuff like he does in Super Smash Bros. So the reason why I'm pretty happy that Fox got in is more so of the games that I played as him in. The original Star Fox, where you could only play as Fox, and I thought that game was pretty good, and I'm not that good at shooters, to put that into perspective. I thought that the Mode 7 graphics worked really well for the time, and maybe because of the limitations, that made it easier for me to get into the shooter, because I didn't have to deal with all the added depth, quite literally, of later shooters. And I've also heard that Fox is pretty cool in Star Fox Adventures, but I have yet to play that game. Well, I played a little bit of it at a demo kiosk, but I only played as Crystal in that demo. I didn't actually play as Fox. Hopefully that game will come to Switch one of these days and I can give it a try, but until then, it's cool what Fox represents, but I definitely wish Fox himself had more development outside the cockpit. Next up we have Wolf, and the reason why Wolf is slightly higher than Fox is because of a historical discrepancy back when Smash Bros. First had trophies. Whenever Wolf had a trophy in the Smash Bros. Games, it would always say that he first appeared in Star Fox 64. However, thanks to the release of the Super NES Classic Edition, that has proven to be false information, as he actually first appeared in Star Fox 2. It's just that that game didn't release until 2017. I really liked Star Fox 2 a lot. In fact, I would even go so far as to say I liked it better than Star Fox 1. Fighting against Star Wolf's team proved to be actually surprisingly addictive and very close to a 3D experience even on the limitations of the Super Nintendo. For introducing the world to Star Wolf through Star Fox 2, which is actually a really good Star Fox game, I think it's neat that Wolf was included so that we could get a nice callback to, quite honestly, my favorite Super Nintendo game. Probably of all time, considering how much I don't like Super Nintendo games for the most part. A lot of people insist on ranking Luigi above Mario merely because Mario has more games and he's always overshadowing his little brother. And to a certain extent, I kind of get that. But to another extent, I also say, well, okay, it's one thing to root for the underdog, but it's another if Luigi actually deserves it. And for the most part, he kind of doesn't. Like, usually if there's a choice to play between Mario and Luigi, generally speaking, I think Mario controls a lot better. And I generally prefer picking Mario over Luigi whenever I have a chance. In the case of Super Mario 3D World, I would rather pick neither of them and just go with Peach. That's not to say Luigi doesn't have his merits. He has some really hilarious moments in the Mario and Luigi games. Some of his cameos in the Paper Mario games prove to be interesting, to say the least. I remember having a decent time with Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube. I recently replayed it again on the 3DS and thought to myself, how the heck did I ever like this game that much? But I still respect it a lot. For a GameCube launch title, man, the graphics were impressive, and to this day, some of the effects are still kind of mind-blowing. I think Luigi is definitely a good character because Nintendo took the time to really develop him as a more cowardly and reserved character as opposed to Mario's endless optimism. But I don't know, I still think he's kind of the lesser brother just because he just happens to not be as good of a character as Mario is more times than not. Little Mac is from the Punch-Out series, and my primary exposure to the character was through Punch-Out Wii, and I had a blast playing that game. I really liked how they put more of an emphasis on the puzzle aspect of things, as opposed to trying to make it so that it was more of a boxing simulation. You really had to read your opponents and know the right time to dodge, and it felt kind of like a dance where you had to be perfectly coordinated with your opponent, and landing those punches felt so satisfying. I especially loved how you could turn the Wii Remote sideways and play it like you were playing the NES version of Punch-Out, which I stunk at because the timing was so much harder on that old controller, which is weird because they say that wireless controllers have slightly more input delay than on the NES, but I don't know. Punch-Out Wii worked just fine for me. So I was really glad to see Little Mac as a character because they used his design from Punch-Out Wii as the basis for his character. And they even added in the knockout punch, which is very hard to do in Punch-Out Wii, and it's very hard to do in Smash as well. So I think he was well represented, and I also think it makes the inclusion of selecting stages before characters a good addition to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, because Little Mac mains could say, this stage has too much jumping, so maybe I won't pick Little Mac. And I also really thought it was neat that we could have some actual Punch-Out music instead of just a tiny little ditty in the past in Brawl, where you just heard the Punch-Out rendition in its original form. It came with 5 new songs, 3 of them were ripped straight from Punch-Out Wii, and then there was a remix of the Minor Circuit and a remix of the Jogging theme, which that ended up being my favorite Punch-Out song. So yay for Little Mac, moving up from being just an assist trophy in Brawl to being a full-fledged character. Yep, we're going with all 3 Kirby characters at once, because my favorite Kirby game, by far, is Kirby Superstar Ultra. It contains all of the regular old games that Kirby Superstar did, plus added a whole bunch of new ones, plus added improvements to the existing ones. And it's really weird that modern Kirby games haven't even tried to come close with the number of games within a game. Like, you get something like Kirby Planet Robobot, which only has like 3 games. Kirby Superstar, the Super Nintendo version, had 6 games, and then Kirby Superstar Ultra almost doubled that amount. Generally speaking, I don't really like Kirby as a character. I think that it's really unfortunate that he controls just, I don't know, a bit too weirdly for my tastes. And there's just a lot of weird oddities in the Kirby franchise that just kind of get on my nerves. It's a bit hard to explain here. I'd have to be playing a Kirby game and say, oh no, not that again. But Kirby Superstar Ultra, I don't know how to explain it. Maybe it was because the stages weren't as vertical, so it was more of a corridor-like design that helped you really have to strategize how you were going to be jumping a lot more than just floating over the stage. and there were a lot more boss battles. Kirby could shield from enemy attacks, and that just added a lot to it. I would say of the Kirby reps, King Dedede is probably my least favorite, but I am so happy that they changed his final smash to Masked King Dedede in the cage match, because that's a reference to how in Kirby Superstar Ultra, when you did the alternate version of Spring Breeze, you fought against Masked Dedede in a boxing ring, and that's such a cool reference. Kirby himself is a bit in the middle because, you know, he's the protagonist. And the Meta Knight is on top because I really loved the Meta Nightmare Ultra mode where you could play through Spring Breeze again as Meta Knight, and I thought that was so cool. And I just think Meta Knight is a cool character. One of the few moments in Kirby's adventure that I actually liked was when Kirby got to face off against Meta Knight, and thankfully Kirby Superstar has a moment like that as well. I also thought it was neat that Meta Knight's final smash was also changed so that it was a reference to one of the moves he uses in Kirby Star Allies, and Kirby got a new final smash starting in Smash for 3DS, where he used the Ultra Sword from Kirby's Return to Dreamland, which was always so satisfying to pull off. I'm really glad that the Kirby reps actually got some pretty cool final smashes to have more references to their games of origin. And Kirby can also turn into a Breath of the Wild treasure chest in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, so he's even referencing other franchises. Okay, I probably should have put him higher on the list for that alone, but hey, we're talking about the games he's from, not how he's handled in Smash, so yay for Kirby transcending his own series. The Villager from the Animal Crossing series. I've been a pretty big fan of Animal Crossing ever since the original on the GameCube. I wouldn't say I was the most diehard Animal Crossing fan ever. I certainly was for the first two entries. Like, I think I played the original Animal Crossing almost every single day for about 2 years straight, give or take, and would even participate in all of the special holidays that were removed from future entries. And I really appreciate how they kept his Wild World design, because Wild World was really the Animal Crossing game that really pushed forward and innovated the series so much and took out a lot of really annoying bits. I know New Leaf kind of did the same thing, which honestly, it would have been pretty neat if they kept the proportions from New Leaf, but then again, I guess we wouldn't have been as excited for Isabelle's reveal, because Isabelle used a lot more maneuvers from the newer Animal Crossing games, but we'll get to that once we get to Isabelle. I like how Villager doesn't seem like a likely candidate for Smash Brothers, but he just pulls out a whole bunch of random stuff from the Animal Crossing series in general, such as digging a hole, using turnips as an attack, hitting opponents with a slingshot, just really random stuff. Building a house for the final smash, I thought that was really cool to reference how you're constantly trying to pay off your debt in the Animal Crossing series. And I also thought it was neat that there was Animal Crossing content in Super Smash Bros. Brawl before Villager got in as a character. And then when Villager did get in, it sort of made it make more sense that the Smash stuff was in there. I'm just really glad that Animal Crossing could get some kind of representation in Smash, because it goes to show you that a series as laid back as Animal Crossing can still work pretty well in a Smash context. And hey, Villager even referenced Balloon Fight for his Up special. So Balloon Fighter is officially in Smash, and if you're wondering, how does that relate to Animal Crossing? It's because the original Animal Crossing on GameCube let you play NES games, and one of the NES games that you could unlock happened to be Balloon Fight. So there you go. It's even referencing its own source material when the source material is referencing other games. Mind blown! Corrin is the protagonist of Fire Emblem Fates. Honestly, I like Fire Emblem Fates a lot more than most people do. I thought it was a solid Fire Emblem adaptation. It still had the usual addictive turn-based strategy. And I really liked what they did with the pair-up system. It was kind of a bit abused in Fire Emblem Awakening, where you could just demolish enemy hordes, because once you reached a high enough level of support, your opponent would pretty much always block attacks and dual strike, and it made for an overall very easy Fire Emblem experience. So they made it a lot more balanced, where you had guard points, and they would also change the effectiveness of your pair-up depending on whether you were next to a character or whether you were actually traveling together. as one unit. However, I can admit that most of the rest of Fire Emblem Fates was kind of a mess. The structure of having 3 different games that you had to buy, and one of them was DLC, seemed like it was kind of a pain. I happened to get the special edition of Fates, so I did have all 3 games packed in, but that was such a limited edition that I just feel like if you weren't a diehard Fire Emblem fan, you were really ripped off. I didn't think Corrin was a terrible protagonist. Nowadays, when I compare him to, say, Byleth or Ike especially, I can be like, yeah, Corrin's a bit on the weaker side. But at the very least, one thing that I do like about Corrin is that he/she, because you can change Corrin's gender, isn't just a passive protagonist that just says like, okay, to everything that the main character says. Corrin is like actively saying, this is my agenda, I am going to do something, let's do this, instead of just following a predetermined path by like destiny or prophecy. So I like the fact that Corrin is a go-getter, and I also like how most of their moves are references to the fact that Corrin can turn into a dragon. And we got more than enough renditions of Lost in Thoughts All Alone, which I always really liked the lyrics to that song. I definitely wish that Fire Emblem Fates had more representation, like maybe if we got other songs, because I don't know if you guys noticed, but Fates has an amazing soundtrack. I guess they just thought that Lost in Thoughts All Alone was so good that they just had to over-rely on it, but oh well. If there's ever a Smash 6, hopefully we'll get some of the other better tunes, because man, that music was underrated in Smash. It would have been easy for the Smash team to just copy over Villager's moveset with a few differences and call it a day with Isabelle. But no, they had to go all out and include even more references to the Animal Crossing series in Isabelle's moveset. Not only that, but like her reveal trailer being a fake out Animal Crossing reveal, only to be a Smash reveal, only to reveal that it actually was an Animal Crossing reveal, just the wrong year. Brilliant. I really liked Isabelle as a character because she proved to be a hard-working female character without having a feminist agenda. That is actually possible. But even better than that, I really like how Isabelle does not feel like an echo fighter of Villager. She seems like a completely original character, and considering how ambitious and how helpful she was in Animal Crossing New Leaf and eventually Animal Crossing New Horizons, I'm really happy that she got in, especially because she was only an assist trophy in the previous Smash Brothers games, and now we can see even more references to her helpful nature, although I don't know how helpful it is when she's beating you up, but hey, at least she beats you up with a smile. I'll admit right off the bat that I'm not the biggest fan of the Dragon Quest series. I don't really like random battles, and I don't really like the combat either. But Dragon Quest XI managed to sell me, mainly because I was really invested in what would happen with the story and the characters, and I really loved the symphonic soundtrack. I don't know how the people on the other consoles managed to do it with only that MIDI nonsense. And then when Hero was announced for Smash, I was kinda sorta mad because I hadn't played Dragon Quest XI at the time, but now that I have, I can totally see the hype, as his down special has 32 different commands, and just about all of them are based on maneuvers that he can do in Dragon Quest XI. So it's neat that I can say, oh yeah, I remember Metal Slash, that was a cool ability to use, and then see it repurposed here in Smash. Even though I think Hero's moveset is kind of basic on its own, I used to not be a huge fan of the magic system, but it's started to grow on me, and now it's a lot of fun mid-match to try to find the right maneuver to stump your opponent without accidentally doing a kamikaze and blowing yourself up. I personally don't really like how the music was handled, but I do have to admit that Hero brought back a lot of, can you call Dragon Quest XI nostalgic when I only played it 2 years ago? Regardless, it was cool seeing the main character of that game in here, and I hope one of these days, if Smash ever gets updated, that we'll get the symphonic music. But for now, I'll just be happy that his moveset and the stage managed to be as good as they were. The oddball character in Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. I happened to really love Wii Fit Plus. I got it for really cheap and the balance board for even cheaper at a local game store. And I remember thinking that the game was so eerily accurate to reading my weight and my proportions that it almost kind of scared me. And then I also felt like I was really doing a proper workout, even if it was really embarrassing to have my family occasionally watching me do those aerobics, because man, you have to get into some interesting poses. I didn't get too far into the mini games in the Wii Fit series, which is good because Smash doesn't reference them a whole lot, but I did do almost every single one of the exercises that the trainers use in battle. So I think it's interesting that they could pull that off, because I can imagine doing some of those maneuvers like for a little bit as a way of working out, but in the heat of battle, especially some of their air smashes, no thanks. I think I'll stick to casual exercising. Thank you very much. Even though I am atrocious at shooters, I can at least respect Splatoon for being a unique take on the shooter genre and proving to be the Wii U's only successful new IP that actually managed to branch off into 2 sequels on one system. Like, how cool is that? I do think it's really cool that the objective of Splatoon isn't so much to defeat your opponent, but to ink the turf. That part of the game I actually really like, because it involves shooting in one direction instead of trying to be precise at trying to hit your opponents. I also liked how you could turn into a squid and even climb up walls if you inked them ahead of time. I was just really terrible at a lot of the missions they provided in the story mode, because I wasn't going to stand a chance in online play. And I really like how they were converted here in Smash. I think their moveset serves really well at representing the various weapons that you can use in the Splatoon series. I really like how their music was handled. Their stage Moray Towers looks suspiciously a lot like 25M from Donkey Kong, but we're only talking about the character right now. We'll save Moray Towers for my stage likability video. I think it was super cool that the Inklings had the ink mechanic, that the Smash team went out of their way to make a different Inkling model for each costume slot, and that they even changed the color of the ink, which must have been a programming nightmare. I love it when game companies go above and beyond in these kinds of areas to really make every part of the game feel special, even the ones that you wouldn't normally think about. I didn't get too far into Xenoblade Chronicles 2 because it has this really annoying theme of you need field abilities to get past certain barriers in the environment, and in order to do that, you have to perform certain tasks. And a lot of those tasks are really mundane, such as perform this special move in 30 seconds. And some of the stuff that they were asking me to do, I didn't even know how to do. Like, they said, cook Pyra's favorite meal. And I was like, okay, I have Pyra's favorite meal. Why isn't she eating it? So I just decided not to play it. But I got far enough to really respect Xenoblade Chronicles for what it was, instead of overly critiquing it just because it happened to have a whole lot of inappropriate shots and over-the-top female proportions. I think it was a really nice follow-up to Xenoblade Chronicles 1, even if it didn't blow my mind as much. It had some nice improvements, such as the quest system being far easier to keep track of. The environments felt more fun to explore, and even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the graphics at first reveal, I kind of prefer Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I also thought that the environments were still really fun to look at. Now, Pyra and Mythra as characters, I don't really like them a whole lot, but that's probably because I didn't get too far into the main game. I thought that Mythra was a bit kind of blunt, because I only saw her in the Torna DLC. And then Pyra was kind of just like, oh, she's there because Rex needs a companion that's kind of sort of his age, except not really, because she's actually ancient history. And I also really liked how you don't actually have to play Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that much to enjoy it. You can set the characters to auto battle, so if you're like me and you only like the exploration, you can do that. Pyra and Mythra being included as characters meant that we got more music from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I really loved a lot of the pieces. I especially loved Ship on a Stormy Sea, Amalthus's theme, Gorma, and Argentum. I think those were standout pieces, and It honestly kind of blew my mind that more tunes weren't like that in Xenoblade 1, and I'm just really, really glad that Xenoblade got more love in Smash, because, man, more people need to play those games. If only they weren't so darn long and had their frustrating, unintuitive design choices, then maybe this series would take off even more than it already did. So the running joke is that Joker's first game, Persona 5, isn't on the Switch, but Persona 5 Strikers, which is a sequel, is, as well as some of the Persona Q games on the 3DS, which had Persona 5 characters in it. As weird as that is, I actually really liked Persona 5 Strikers, and that allowed me to put Joker on this list. I don't particularly like playing as Joker in that game. I prefer playing as Queen or Panther, but I really liked Persona 5 not only because it was like another Hyrule Warriors game, but because it had a pretty good storyline that delved into the concept of free will in humans versus that of autonomous machines. It was really fun to pull off all these crazy acrobatic combos. And that's one thing that I really like about Joker's moveset, was even before I played Persona 5 Strikers, I liked how stylish Joker was. And I also love how his final Smash screen isn't exactly trying to be a graphical showstopper, it's trying to represent that wild, wacky pop-up book aesthetic of Persona 5, and it succeeds brilliantly. Not to mention he has one of the coolest victory screens in all of Smash. I think Sephiroth is probably the only one that I would say even comes close. So I really like it when the Smash team does those personal touches like that. So I really hope that we can find out the origins behind Joker on our home system instead of having Persona 5 Strikers spoil a lot of the main story of that game. But in the meantime, at least we got Joker at all, which is more than what Master Chief can say, according to some diehard fans. Yeah, baby! Sonic the Hedgehog in Smash. Sonic was such a great character during a lot of my childhood, as my best friend had all of the Sonic games on the Genesis, and then I had the Sonic and Knuckles collection on the PC. Bet a lot of you didn't even know that existed, although nowadays that version has become notorious for having completely rearranged music, including all new music for 3 of the zones to make up for the Michael Jackson controversy. And so I really loved Sonic because he was a character that went really fast, but at the same time, he had moments where he had to stop and think. So it wasn't like the more modern Sonic games where you could just blast your way through everything without having to carefully plan out what you wanted to do in the stages. And I liked, especially in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, that the Smash team decided to reference pretty much all of Sonic's history rather than just focusing on the classic era. That goes into more of the spirits than the character, but hey, they cut out Solid Snake from Smash for 3DS and Wii U, and Sonic wasn't cut. So I'm just really glad that Sonic has stayed in every Smash game since Brawl. And even though his moveset is a bit lacking, his side special and his down B are basically the same thing. I also really like just outwitting opponents by Sonic's sheer speediness alone, and just challenging other characters to find artificial ways to try to outrun Sonic. So sometimes I like busting out Sonic as kind of a joke. He's a bit weak, which is kind of the point. Like in the original games, he would attack enemies by jumping on them, which would be too overpowered in Smash, so they had to give him a weakness somehow, but they kept his traditional speed. And I also like how they put in the homing attack from the Sonic Adventure games. That's great that Sega managed to have their most iconic rep in Smash, and it'll be great to see if maybe Phoenix Wright gets the same treatment if there's ever a Smash 6, which I'm not holding my breath, but we didn't know Ultimate would happen, so there may be a surprise Smash game on the horizon several years from now as well. Next up, we have the 3 Kid Icarus reps, Pit, Dark Pit, and Palutena, all representing my love for Kid Icarus Uprising. I really like Pit as a character because, well, for one, he's extremely self-aware and constantly references other Nintendo games and the fact that he's in a game throughout Uprising. One of my favorite quips from that game is when you're doing the tutorial and he says, "I have a question. So who exactly is this Icarus guy in the game's title? Will I get to meet him during the story?" And it's just hilarious that he doesn't realize that the series is all about him and that he happens to be named Pit, when a lot of people must have assumed that his name was Icarus. And then Dark Pit was a nice counter to Pit, because Pit is this spunky, outgoing, do whatever Lady Palutena says, and Dark Pit is this dark, brooding, I'll do this on my own, I'm on my own side type of character. And he gradually gets some development, and then Palutena sort of serves as like the more serious version of Pit when the two of them are cracking jokes with each other. And I love how they're like in constant communication throughout Uprising. Like during the missions, Pit'll be chatting away with her and sometimes the other goddesses. And it's a neat way for the story to play out without having a whole bunch of cutscenes. I mean, there are a couple in Uprising, but most of them are only a couple of seconds long because the gameplay is doing more of the talking. I thought it was cool that even though Pit was already in Brawl before Uprising came out, they pretty much completely redid his moveset so that a lot of it was based on the weapons and abilities he had in Uprising. And Palutena's moveset was based on a lot of the powers that Pit had that he could use. Like, her Final Smash, for example, was based on the Mega Laser that Pit could equip. And I just think that was super cool how they could incorporate even more of Uprising into another character that, honestly, I definitely wouldn't have guessed that Palutena would be a character. But I'm glad that she was, because, man, that reveal trailer where they were talking to each other was hilarious. And then Dark Pit is yet another clone, but hey, at least he references the Electro Dash arm, which is neat, I guess. Dark Pit is probably my least hyped of the Kid Icarus reps, but he was also the only one that actually came from Uprising. And it was always a blast to fight Dark Pit, because you felt like you were fighting yourself, because his moveset was so similar to Pit's. And I also thought it was interesting that Dark Pit can fly as long as he wants, whereas Pit can only fly for 5 minutes at a time. So that provided some interesting banter between the two, and even a very interesting moment later in the narrative. I don't particularly like how Pit's new Final Smash spoils a major part of Uprising's narrative, and Dark Pit's Final Smash, while accurate to the source material, also isn't particularly flashy. But it is nice that you could take a character that only had 2 games, and then Sakurai could just, like, 25 years later, completely reinvent the character, and that translated really well over into Smash. So overall, I am very satisfied with the 3 Kid Icarus reps in there. You might think it's weird that I've got Peach this high on the list when she's mainly relegated to a damsel in distress. Well, that may be the case for most Mario games, but every now and then the creators decide to get a bit creative, and they say, what if we made Peach a playable character in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, which led to the creation of the adorable Peachette. But technically, Peachette is a different character from Peach, because you can beat the final battle as Peachette, and when she walks onto the screen, the real Peach is in a cage in the background, and she's like visibly confused by how there can be 2 of her. I particularly like how Peach was a playable character in Super Mario Bros. 2, and how she had her hover ability, which made her kind of broken in my opinion, and then they totally brought that back in Super Mario 3D World. Even though I don't like 3D World, I will admit that playing as Peach is my preferred way to play it if I have to. Then she also had her other appearances like Super Princess Peach, where she used the power of emotion to influence people, which was, it was kind of a stupid game, but it was also a lot of fun to see what creative ways they could use, say, Peach's anger to solve a problem, which I thought was really cool, how you could like use the power of flames to puff up a balloon. And it's really weird that they didn't reference that a whole lot in Smash. Like, sure, Peach's Final Smash has artwork that's similar to the drawings that you saw on the touchscreen in Super Princess Peach, but I think they just wanted to do a play on words of her name and the fact that she's so cutesy. That's why she has hearts coming out of a lot of her maneuvers. And I also think it was cool that she has a purple dress, which could be a vague reference to the Shadow Queen, because everyone loves Paper Mario 2. I think Peach definitely deserves a lot more credit than just another princess to save, because she's actually been quite proactive in some of the games. And in the Paper Mario games, she's even helped out Mario from behind the scenes, even though she's kidnapped. And in Super Paper Mario, she was even a playable character and one of my favorites to play as because of her hover ability. So Mario games, maybe one of these days make a 3D game that's not 3D World, where Peach actually takes a proactive role similar to what she does in Paper Mario, where she actually has dialogue and meaningful abilities. Man, I miss those days. Next up is Sheik, who felt like an odd inclusion when she was included in Melee because Sheik didn't really do a whole lot in Ocarina of Time. She would occasionally throw Deku nuts that would cause her to disappear. At one point she made a firewall appear in front of her, and at another point she dove into the water and that made her disappear. But the Hyrule Warriors games came out and gave Sheik a much-needed moveset expansion, including making use of the harp that she used to teach Link new melodies. My hype for Sheik is primarily based around those handful of games because honestly, she hasn't been used a whole lot in other Zelda games. In Brawl, her design was based on a beta costume for Twilight Princess, but she was eventually scrapped, which is really unfortunate. I won't get into why that's unfortunate because that would be spoilers for Twilight Princess, but I definitely think that Sheik had the making of a cool character, and that's probably why she was in Melee, because her moveset was established even before the Hyrule Warriors games, which honestly doesn't have a whole lot of references to its main series. One thing I was really glad about in Ultimate is that they gave her the design of the Sheikah armor from Breath of the Wild, and they made her final smash actually different from just a boring old light arrow. They made it so that she got the sickle, which I believe was the scimitar of the seven that you would get from the Gerudo race, and she would just slash the opponent to pieces, which fit more of the stealthy yet quick ninja type of vibe, and it also gave reference to the fact that she's of the Sheikah tribe, and it helped to differentiate her from Zelda. So overall, Sheik is a pretty cool character to use. I wish she was more used in her series of origin, but hey, we always have Hyrule Warriors as a basis for how Sheik could be handled in future Zelda games. Oh, I just realized she could be in Breath of the Wild too. Oh wow. Well, I better not speculate too much. I'll leave that to folks like Arlo, but if I'm the first person on the internet to say that, then wow, I feel proud of myself now. Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong are lumped together because I primarily play as them combined in the Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze games as opposed to playing them separately. Although I did used to really like Donkey Kong 64, where Diddy Kong had a jetpack and peanut pop guns, and he could even bust out a guitar and wipe out all the enemies on the screen just by playing a melody. In the Donkey Kong Country games, he serves as more of a helper character to Donkey Kong, where he rides on Donkey's back, and then he can extend the length of Donkey Kong's forward roll, and he can also use his jetpack to help Donkey Kong cross over difficult platforming segments. And I think it's really neat that Diddy's moveset referenced both the Country games and Donkey Kong 64, because he has his peanut pop gun and his jetpack still, and they improved his final smash from Brawl so that it was actually quicker and he didn't have to fly around the screen hoping that you wouldn't end the final smash over a pit. Yeah, those final smashes that you had to manually control and Ultimate, I'm definitely glad that most of those got the axe, because those, in retrospect, weren't actually that cool at all. So I would put Donkey Kong slightly over Diddy because you're always playing as him in Tropical Freeze, whereas Diddy Kong, like, disappears when you get hit. And I just like how Donkey Kong handles. He has a heavier feel to Mario, and his momentum just seems to be better all around. It feels more fun to traverse the Country games, even if they're significantly harder. And hey, they even brought in some music from Tropical Freeze in Smash for 3DS and Wii U, despite that game just coming out. Too bad they didn't add more tracks from Tropical Freeze in Ultimate, but hey, at least we got a Lord Frederick spirit, so that's something. Next up we have Yoshi, Mario's rideable sidekick in Super Mario World, who eventually got his own franchise. And I'm primarily referring to how much I love Yoshi's Woolly World in this placement, as that was a fantastic platformer with a really cool art style. And I also really loved how it actually made amiibos worth it, as just about every amiibo that was compatible at the time could give Yoshi a new skin, and so you could reference several of Nintendo's best games within one game. Like, I could have an Ike costume from Path of Radiance, because, well, technically I guess that would have been Radiant Dawn, because they didn't have a Path of Radiance Ike amiibo at the time, but you know what I mean. Like, I could say, I love Fire Emblem, so let me show off my Fire Emblem Yoshi. I also think Yoshi's moveset it's okay. Like, I like how it's primarily based on his Yoshi's Island and Yoshi 64, Yoshi's Story moveset, but that doesn't always mean he's the best character, because his recovery is kind of lackluster. But one thing I do like is that he has his own unique shield, that being the egg, and his final smash was upgraded so that it was actually a reference to the opening cutscene of Super Smash Bros. Melee, where you had the horde of Yoshis. Although, if you want to get even more into the obscure territory, you could also say it's a dual reference to one of Yoshi's abilities in Paper Mario 2, where he bowls over a lot of his opponents with the maneuver Stampede. But the Melee cutscene came first, so that's what I'm going to count it as. Bowser has kind of come into two different categories in the Mario lore. On one hand, you've got the terrifying Bowser that caused me to absolutely groan in fear whenever I would enter a Bowser's castle in the original Super Mario Bros., because Bowser would be so hard to get past. Or in Super Mario 64, when you get to the final battle and Bowser's this terrifying menace with his darkened coloration and his ominous laugh and the organ music playing in the background, and how darn hard it was to get Bowser to be flung into the spiked balls. But then you've also got the lighter side of Bowser, where he's a huge comic relief character in games like Paper Mario 2 and Bowser's Inside Story. However, both Smash and recent Mario games have seemed to realize that people want the more terrifying Bowser back. So Super Smash Bros. Melee invented Giga Bowser, which was Sakurai's way of saying, this is how I originally envisioned Bowser before he had his more cutesy redesign. And in Smash Ultimate, Giga Bowser is not only a boss, but he's also been upgraded in Bowser's final Smash so that he now appears in the background and punches the opponents in the foreground, which is a reference to Yoshi's Island's final battle, which I thought was neat, even though I've never played that game. But I also think it's cool that Giga Bowser was less controllable. As I said with Diddy Kong's new Final Smash, I like how Ultimate's Final Smashes were a lot more automated. Where, yes, you'd have to aim them properly, but you wouldn't have a character in an alternate position that you'd have free control over. It made the playing field more fair. One thing I particularly like that gave me some insight into the Mario games embracing the scarier Bowser is that Bowser's Fury had Fury Bowser, who's humongous, and he could actually be pretty terrifying if you didn't have enough power-ups. And I think that was another way of them saying, yeah, let's get back to the menacing, terrifying Bowser. But I happen to be a huge fan of every scene he's in Paper Mario 2. Bowser's Inside Story is also one of my favorite Mario RPGs. And he even joins Mario's team in Super Mario RPG and Super Paper Mario. So I definitely think it's cool that he can coexist in these two identities, yet still be a cool character. Just whatever you do, Nintendo, don't give us another iteration of Bowser like he was in Sticker Star and Color Splash. The world can't unsee that anytime soon. Rosalina and Luma were a very important side character in Super Mario Galaxy. But then Smash came along and said, what if we reference Super Mario Galaxy as a character? And that's what makes Rosalina and Luma so mind-blowing, is that essentially every single one of their moves is inspired by something that was possible in Super Mario Galaxy. With the possible exception of the Luma shot, I think that was just referencing the fact that Rosalina is the mother of the Lumas. If you've read her backstory, yes, that's right, a Mario character gets a backstory in a main 3D Mario game. Like, bring those back, guys. Tie up Shigeru Miyamoto, lock him in a closet, and make stuff like that happen again. Please, I beg of you. But yes, the rest of Rosalina's moves are based on stuff that Mario could do in Super Mario Galaxy. He could shoot star bits, he could launch from the launch stars, and the gravitational pull, I think, was more of a reference to just the fact that Mario is traveling on planets instead of boring old flat surfaces. And her Final Smash was updated in Ultimate, said it was based on the Grand Stars instead of just a lame Power Star. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that they don't like Rosalina as a character, which I can kind of see that. She kind of just sits idly by in the main story, and you kind of have to go out of your way to find the library in Super Mario Galaxy to read her backstory. But I really like the fact that if she hadn't had a backstory, she probably wouldn't be appearing in as many Mario games as she does. And even if she's kind of lost a little bit of her charm, because now she's more or less the Waluigi and Daisy of the modern Mario games, but at least we have Smash Brothers that reminds us, hey, this is where Rosalina originated from, so let's appreciate an era back when Nintendo was more willing to embrace a more deep, lore-filled side of Mario games than the more generic stuff we get nowadays. Young Link is based on the Hero of Time, which is the Link that was the main character of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I know a lot of people are going to lament the fact that this Link, his design and his moveset is primarily from what he does in Ocarina of Time, and even then, it's interesting that he wields the fairy bow because young Link actually couldn't wield that in Ocarina of Time, but then again, he could wield a bow in Majora's Mask. So I guess there's a Majora's Mask reference, guys. See, they didn't completely abandon that game. I think it was cool that for the Young Link revival, because he was cut from every Smash game since Melee because Toon Link was a decent replacement, I think it was cool that they decided to remix Term in a Field and use that as Young Link's introduction trailer on the Smash website. I also really like his updated design that's based on the redesign he got in Ocarina of Time 3D. And I think it's also really cool that Young Link is sort of a return to how Link used to control, so that Breath of the Wild Link and Toon Link can feel more like separate characters. He also got the Triforce Slash, which I know people would have preferred having the Fierce Deity as Young Link's final smash, but I've always really liked the Triforce Slash. I thought it was a really cool interpretation of how Link always would seem to have the Triforce, but hardly ever do anything with it. So the Triforce actually served as a really powerful maneuver for Link to just clobber his opponents and brawl. And I'm glad to see that, Link got the ancient arrows, so they gave the Triforce Slash to Young Link. And the design was based on how the Triforce looked in A Link Between Worlds. So yes, more Link Between Worlds love. I love it when Nintendo acknowledges that that game existed. Overall, having the three Links back was really cool, especially because Young Link's classic mode route is called Hyrule Smash, and it's just a reference to Zelda games all across the board, which is great because I love most of the Zelda games out there, and most of the Zelda games they reference were the good ones. Thank you, Nintendo, for paying attention to which of the Zelda games aren't that great. Next up, we have Zelda, whose design is based off of A Link Between Worlds. Honestly, that version of Zelda didn't really do a whole lot, but I do think her design was pretty cute. I always prefer the younger Zelda to the older Zelda, mainly because older Zelda usually tends to be a lot more pensive and kind of passive, whereas young Zelda, admittedly, she's the one that gets kidnapped more often, but she just seems to have this, she just seems very adorable. Even in Ocarina of Time, where she's admittedly much more of this deep planner. She has a moment where she's just so happy that her predictions came true and that she's seeing the hero of her dreams in front of her. She just has this cute little childlike giggle, and they even referenced young Zelda in a spirit battle. So I like the fact that this is the only Smash character that's actually had her age dramatically reduced, because she was always an adult in the previous Smash games, and now she's a kid, although one of her alternate costumes is based on the coloration of her adult self. So that is really neat. And I also really liked how Zelda got a new final smash. Just as I had just finished gushing about how I liked the fact that Young Link still had the Triforce Slash, Zelda now gets to use her own Triforce to suck in the opponents and seal them inside the void between dimensions, which is something that she does in the Zelda games. I won't say which ones, but I do think it's really cool that Zelda didn't just get another lame light arrow, which itself was a cool reference to Twilight Princess, but I like this one a lot better because it showcases that Zelda possesses the Triforce, guys. She's not just a damsel in distress. She actually has quite a lot of incredible power. And I also liked how in Smash 3DS, because you no longer switched between Zelda and Sheik, that Zelda's down special became the Phantom from Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks to reference how she could possess the Phantoms in Spirit Tracks. I didn't actually get that far in Spirit Tracks, but I thought that was a cool reference, and from what I heard, that Zelda was pretty cool. My personal favorite Zelda is the one from Skyward Sword, but I bet if I actually were to play Spirit Tracks, she would be pretty up there on my list of favorite Zeldas. This version of Ganondorf was based on how he appeared in Ocarina of Time. I personally really like this design. I definitely liked Ganondorf's design in Twilight Princess, which was what they designed him off of in Brawl and Smash 3DS, but they missed the mark on what made that Ganondorf so special, as they didn't even give him a sword. They just made him more or less a clone of Captain Falcon with a different final smash. In Ultimate, they differentiated him even more by making him slightly faster, because this Ganondorf is a lot slimmer and younger, and they also gave him swords for his smash attack, because yes, Ganondorf uses swords, and even before he used a sword, in Melee, he swung around a sword for his victory screen, but didn't actually use it in the actual Smash game. What the heck, guys? Ganondorf is an accomplished sword wielder, because, he's descended from the Gerudo, their mighty Amazon-themed warriors. And he also possesses the Triforce of Power, which gives him amazing magical abilities. Yet he's still mainly a clone of Captain Falcon, but at least he's not as much in Ultimate. One thing that I really like about Ultimate is that not only once, but twice did they reference Ganondorf's beast form from Ocarina of Time. The one in Twilight Princess looked more like a pig, so it's neat that this was actually a menacing Ganon that had dual swords, and there was thunder and lightning in the background of the battle, and he even knocked the Master Sword out of Link's hands, making you have to think, oh shoot, I gotta figure out another way to fight Ganon. And I liked how that was Ganondorf's updated Final Smash, and also you could fight Ganon as a boss. That did such a fantastic job of reinventing that classic battle in Ocarina of Time, and you even still had to attack the tail, which I thought was priceless. Overall, I really like whenever Ganondorf appears in a Zelda game, as yes, he's very much a stereotypical I must conquer the world type of villain, but he always puts up a pretty good fight, even if it more or less amounts to a tennis match in Ocarina of Time. But Ganondorf definitely does a good job of showing that he has a more proactive role in Ocarina of Time, as opposed to mainly just sitting back and observing things behind the scenes in the other Zelda games that he's in. I guess that's another point in favor of having the Ocarina of Time design, as that Ganondorf actually did stuff. He didn't just sit behind on the throne and say, "Mwahaha, the world is mine because I have the Triforce." He actually did work. He did some conquering. You actually saw the effects of Hyrule during the time skip, and I just think that Ganondorf is pretty darn cool in retrospect. Next we have the 3 Fire Emblem Awakening reps, Lucina, Chrom, and Robin. It is interesting that of the 3 of them, only one has an original moveset, because Lucina is a clone of Marth, and Chrom is an echo of Roy, but also at the same time kind of copies Ike's up B. But I guess Smash didn't want you to be an echo of 2 different characters. That being said, I was one of the few people that was actually pretty excited when Chrom was revealed as a playable character, because I really like Chrom in Fire Emblem Awakening. Admittedly, he's one of the more forgettable Fire Emblem lords in the main story, but then when you see his supports, you see the more reckless side of him that isn't as common, because most of the Fire Emblem lords are these very composed, they know what they're doing type of character, and Chrom is this very easygoing guy. He's the leader of a band of mercenaries, even though he's technically a prince. He doesn't even like people bowing to him or calling him Prince Chrom. He's just like, just call me Chrom. I'm just an ordinary guy that leads a band of mercenaries because I got nothing better to do. And I think his more reckless side was portrayed really well, as he's a nice, speedy character that is kind of like if Sonic the Hedgehog had a sword, but at the same time, you can also get too reckless with his moves, and I think that fits Chrom's character really well. I also think it's really neat that Chrom is still in Robin's final smash, so you can be fighting Chrom with Chrom in another character. Robin I really liked because Robin made use of his magical abilities from Awakening and also the Levin Sword, which was a weapon in Awakening that let you shoot thunderbolts. But since Robin already could use thunder attacks, it kind of felt a bit redundant. And I also thought it was neat that they referenced the fact that weapons break in Awakening, so you only had limited uses of Robin's abilities. And the final smash was a reference to how you could pair up with characters, and more often than not, most people would have Chrom and Robin pair up, and if you were playing as female Robin, you could even get married and have a kid. And then there's Lucina, which really unfortunate that Lucina got into Smash, not because I dislike Lucina, but because that's a huge spoiler in and of itself. So I really don't want to say any more about why I like Lucina, just that it's cool that another Awakening rep got in, because that game was pretty amazing. If not being a more standard Fire Emblem game, they really had to ruin one of the best twists in Awakening. I won't ruin it any further. Let's move on to the next characters. Nintendo's flagship character, Mario, has been in every single Smash game since the beginning. I mean, wouldn't that be weird if there was a Smash Brothers game without Mario? I mean, that would be like having a Sega All-Stars game without Sonic. It just wouldn't make any sense for the character not, or for the company not to have their flagship character. It seems a bit cliche to put Mario this high on the list, especially because he's been in so many games, and so many other people would say Luigi's the superior brother. I happen to disagree with that opinion, mainly because I prefer playing as Mario whenever I have the choice between them. And I also just think the games that he's in without Luigi tend to be the better ones. Like Super Mario Odyssey, for example. Mario has Cappy, which allows him to capture the enemies, which itself is an amazing mechanic. But then Mario can also use Cappy as like a helper. You can jump off of him when doing these cool platforming segments. You can collect coins by twirling the hat around him. And even though I wish they did more with the potential of Cappy in Mario's actual moveset, at least they remembered that Cappy existed by letting Mario collect regional coins with his up special on occasion, and also using Cappy for some of his taunts, and Cappy got a whole spirit battle and a Mii costume. I do wish that maybe Mario didn't have Flood as his down special, because even though that's a neat reference to Super Mario Sunshine, it also doesn't do a whole lot unless if you're a pro Smash player and you know how to edgeguard really well. Then again, I am not a pro Smash player, so I don't know what all that terminology means. But I really love Super Mario Odyssey. I love Super Mario Galaxy. I adore the Paper Mario games. Wouldn't it have been cool if Paper Mario was included as a character instead of Dr. Mario? I think that's a way better alternate version of Mario in my personal opinion. So overall, I just think Mario is a joy to just run around and have fun moving, even if you get nothing accomplished. There's a reason why a lot of people say that Peach's front yard in Super Mario 64 is one of the greatest training areas in gaming history, because it's an area where you can just enjoy playing as Mario. Actually, now that I mentioned Mario 64 DS, I do actually prefer playing as Luigi over Mario in that game. But Mario is also the only one who can enter the Bowser worlds, so I guess that gives him a slight edge. This version of Link is based on how he appeared in Breath of the Wild, and I couldn't be happier, because that's my favorite version of Link. Admittedly, Twilight Princess Link is pretty darn close behind, because Twilight Princess Link could do some amazing things. But they already did that in Brawl when they made his appearance based on the latest Zelda game, so they had to do the same thing for Ultimate. I also really like how, to differentiate Link from Young Link and Toon Link, they revamped his moveset so that it was more based on stuff that he did in Breath of the Wild. Yes, it was possible to find boomerangs in that game, so that's also not a stretch. And even little things that didn't need touching up, like the fact that Link's entrance into battle is now jumping off of the paraglider, how when he's at full health he can shoot sword beams from the Master Sword, just like you can do in a lot of Zelda games, including Skyward Sword, A Link to the Past, and even Breath of the Wild. And his final smash is shooting an ancient arrow, which cinematically is kind of boring compared to the Triforce Slash, but what better thing could you do than that? I mean, the ancient arrow can decimate any enemy, including a Lionel, in one hit. The only enemies that it doesn't defeat in one hit are bosses. So that's literally the most powerful thing Link could do. So it manages to fit really well. I think it would have been neat if maybe some of the champion's powers could have been used to some capacity. Like maybe if Link charged up the spin attack more, it could be used as Urbosa's Fury, but then again, how would you incorporate the other Smash moves in there? Maybe that'll be something that modders can do, but for now, I think it was really cool that Smash paid attention to Breath of the Wild so much that they essentially took an existing character that's been there since Smash 64 and actually refreshed his moveset considerably. None of the other Smash 64 reps got that much attention, so at least one of them did. I forgot to announce that Link was number 5 on my list, so number 4, Shulk. Yeah, Shulk isn't one of my favorite characters to play as in Ultimate, but he's high up on this list in hype because I adore Xenoblade Chronicles. That has to be one of my favorite games. It's just such a fun RPG to just run around and explore and like see other landscapes in the background, and it has an amazing story, top-notch voice acting. Then the definitive version just makes everything 10 times better, and it makes you wonder how you ever survived just playing the game on the Wii. I thought it was really neat that the Smash team incorporated just about all of Shulk's maneuvers in his main games into his moveset. And even cooler is that his classic mode route, each opponent is actually a reference to one of his Monado abilities. Like when you face against Sonic, it's based on him having the speed power-up. I also thought it was neat that even being aware of your surroundings, that was a big part of Xenoblade Chronicles' combat, was incorporated into Shulk's moveset. Like his backslash is more powerful against opponents that you hit from behind, just like it was in Xenoblade Chronicles. And in the Definitive Edition, they were even more aware of that because they give you an exclamation mark when you actually are behind an enemy, because sometimes it was pretty hard to tell because the enemy designs in that game could be a bit too symmetrical at times. So even though Shulk as a character in Ultimate is not the best for me, I do think it was neat that they did a good job of replicating how he fought in his game of Origin. I don't like the fact that his Final Smash is a major spoiler and one of his spirit battles is a major... Actually, 2 of his spirit battles are major spoilers. And Xenoblade Chronicles is the kind of game where you really ought to go into it knowing as little as possible. But hey, this is what got the Xenoblade Chronicles hype train started. Without Shulk, we might not have had Pyra and Mythra, because that would have been weird if Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was represented before Xenoblade Chronicles 1. Smash 3DS and Wii U, you actually did something good for a change. At number 3, we have Ike, and in one of the most brilliant moves ever, Ultimate couldn't decide whether they wanted to go with Ike's classic look from Path of Radiance or his older look from Radiant Dawn, so they said, why don't we just have both? And they even decided to ask the voice actor to re-record his lines for both of them so that he could sound older as Radiant Dawn Ike. Admittedly, they recast Ike so that it's no longer Jason Adkins, his original actor, playing him, but now it's Greg Chun, which I'm not 100% sure of, but I think he was the guy that voiced Ike in Fire Emblem Heroes, so they probably wanted to update the voice cast, especially as they finally had Marth and Roy speaking in English. Took you long enough, guys. Path of Radiance happens to be, and I say this with a lot of games, but with the Fire Emblem series, I really mean it when I say this is absolutely one of the best games I have ever played. Path of Radiance was one of the first games that actually helped me to realize that story could do a good job of really getting your emotions going, especially in video games. Like, I didn't think it was possible for there to be a video game where the main character could actually die. And you could have consequences for being bad at the game. Like, if you messed up on a battle, your units would die and they'd be gone forever. Admittedly, my brothers and I, we would sometimes cheat and we'd just reset the battle so that we could have our characters back. And Fire Emblem games in the future seem to realize that, so they added things like rewinding and save states to counter our stupidity. But nevertheless, that was a really cool mechanic that made you consider the units more as friends. I really like how Ike at the time was a very non-stereotypical lord. All the other main characters were these regal, princely types. Ike was just a standard mercenary that had no grasp of manners, and in fact, just to further make fun of the whole like Fire Emblem lords have to be royalty stereotype, Ike actually doesn't get along with royalty very well at all. In fact, He's often told that he has too rough of a tongue and he needs to watch his manners, and Ike just has no filter whatsoever, which makes him one of my favorite lords, because even though he's not very polite, he also has a grasp on like not being biased towards anyone. Like if a person is good and they're capable of doing a good thing and fighting well, Ike's like, I don't care what your race is, let's just do it. And Path of Radiance did a good job of tackling the stupidity of racist people and how Ike is just like, why are you hating that person just because they have a tail? That really doesn't matter to me. I think it was neat that Ike could get in just to say, hey guys, play Path of Radiance, will ya? And then try Radiant Dawn if you really like it. Now, I know Radiant Dawn is a bit divisive, especially because it's kind of unbalanced in its difficulty, but the payoff is that it has an amazing narration. Those games are stupid expensive right now, so I hope Nintendo will find a way of re-releasing the Tellius games, because you owe it to yourself to play Path of Radiance. And hey, it's a standalone story, so if you're worried, oh no, I haven't played the other Fire Emblems, don't worry, you'll understand Path of Radiance just fine. As long as you play that for Radiant Dawn, you're good to go. And in a move that probably no one saw coming, Byleth is my number 2. Byleth may have been a hated character for most of the world. I am not most of the world. I was insanely excited to see Byleth revealed for Smash. I can agree that it might have been lame if that was the very last character added to Smash, if there wasn't a Fighter's Pass 2, but Three Houses is my 3rd favorite game currently. And I definitely think that Byleth is a very underrated lord, because like Ike, Byleth was also a mercenary, didn't really have royalty at all. That could get into potential spoilers with the circumstances of Byleth's birth, so I'll just leave that to Fire Emblem Three Houses to explain. And I also really like how Byleth is just minding their own business. I prefer to play as a girl, so I use female pronouns from now on. And then she's just told, hey, be a teacher at this academy to teach students how to go to war, because you're an experienced mercenary. It's just really cool how Byleth is just like, oh, okay. And so even though Byleth doesn't have a whole lot of lines, you can choose what he or she says. And a lot of times you can choose between being snarky versus being polite. And it's cool that you can inject yourself into the character more than you ever could with Robin or Corrin. Not only that, but I think it was cool that people who say maybe wanted Edelgard to get the Three Houses slot over Byleth, they technically get that because Byleth uses all of the heroes' relics, which Byleth could technically use because Byleth had the Crest of Flames, which was the most powerful crest ever, which meant that Byleth was the only character in Three Houses that could actually wield the Sword of the Creator, which was a huge perk because anyone else who tried would turn into a monster. I think that was cool that that was incorporated into most of Byleth's moveset, and they even referenced the opening cutscene for her final smash, and the costumes are all done really well, and we got some more Three Houses music, and overall I just definitely think that the hate for Byleth was to a certain extent understandable, but also a bit unwarranted. I personally am overjoyed that Three Houses actually got representation in Ultimate, because I thought, oh no, the game is too new, I guess we won't get Chasing Daybreak in Smash, but we did. So Sakurai, even if no one else thanks you, I thank you for including one of my favorite games in there. But even though it's one of my favorites, that doesn't mean it's the most hyped franchise ever, because Fire Emblem has been in Smash before. But the next franchise is Banjo-Kazooie. Oh my gosh, I cannot begin to describe how excited I was to see Banjo and Kazooie in Smash. I'm generally not the most outwardly emotional gamer. Most of the time, I wait to take in the announcements, and then after that, I'll go around and tell people, hey, guess what? This game was announced. But when Banjo was announced for Smash, I leapt out of my seat. And I kept saying, is this real? Is this real? Is this real? And then I ran through the house shouting for anyone to hear me. Finally, I just called my brother on the phone and I just said, Banjo's in Smash! I just had to tell someone! And what made this doubly cool is that Banjo is owned by Microsoft, and yet they still got permission to be on Nintendo systems. And just recently, they got permission to be on Nintendo Switch Online. So now, people can finally play the original Nintendo 64 version of Banjo on modern hardware, which I don't think any of us thought was possible. I think we thought that Rare would give us a remaster somewhere along the line, but nope, we're getting the original version. Yeah, baby. Hope the cheat codes still work. And so, I think that I made an entire video talking about how amazingly they were portrayed in Smash, so that would be a little bit redundant if I were to repeat a lot of my points here, but just about everything was done absolutely perfectly. Their animations, their design, the stage. They got Grant Kirkhope to compose the remix of Spiral Mountain. Like, how much better can you get than the original composer? And overall, they were mind-blowing from start to finish, and honestly, that would have been really cool if that ended the Fighter's Pass, as Sora was a great way to end it, but man, can you imagine people losing their minds over Banjo being the final one? But hey, I also think that because Banjo was released the year before the pandemic started, that allowed them to more maximize the potential of the character. So I guess in a way, I should be thankful for the timing, knowing what happened in the future of the announcement. So with that, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope this list made sense. For me, it was mainly just an excuse to ramble about my favorite characters, which I always love doing. So let me know in the comment section what characters you were most hyped at from a standpoint of your loving of the games, not so much how good you are at the character, because even I can admit that Banjo and Kazooie could be potentially low level in a tournament, but hey, I love them so much that I'll play as them anyway. So until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and who knows, maybe we'll see Phoenix Wright in an eventual Smash 6. Bye!